So this is my cabinet. It's about halfway finished, and I thought I'd give some sort of guide on how I built it, and it might help somebody who's starting out. But I figured a picture of it half built might give you a clue as to what it's going to look like when it's finished. So a few of the features. There's the marquee with the marquee light. What I've done is, oh, that's a bit dark, but the bottom marquee light goes all the way to the back, so the only thing visible from the back is the cable. That was so that when the light comes on, there isn't any visible light shining through the speakers. This section here is where the speakers will go. It's a bit of a tight space. Okay, so as you can see, that is where the speakers will go. These two bits of wood here, this is where the glass will go, and the end result is it will slot behind this metal chrome L bracket. And this bit of wood here is to mount the monitor in case I wish to not put it on its stand. We have the control panel, which isn't done yet, and we have here a concealed drawer, and now we have the drawer which will hold the mouse and keyboard. The reason for doing it like this and not having actual drawer fronts is because I wanted to make it nice and flush, so there's just a simple mechanism around the back to open it. And the other goal was to make, if you look on the cabinet, no visible screws to make it easier to sand and paint. Obviously at the front here I've had to do some which will get filled. Around the back I cut the back plate into 3 pieces. This one, the back bit, is so that I can get access to the speakers and the light if I need to, and the middle section is just permanently glued and screwed, and the bottom section, if I spin it round, is the drawer to access the computer. Okay, so that bit of wood there is so that when I want to open the drawer I just push it back slightly, because the cabinet's on wheels, and it will nudge the wood forward and let me pull out the drawer, and that was the easiest solution I had. One thing that I wanted was to make the cabinet so that the control panel wasn't sticking out. I don't really like those. I want it nice and neat, and just for dimensions, this is 66 centimeters wide, which is about 35 inches, and that I thought would give me enough space for 1 player, 2 players, and possibly a trackball in the middle. Now, putting a hinge in would be quite difficult because you can't put it at the front because there's no space, because it's flush at the front. So the idea is, if I just move these metal clips now, because they were just to show you what it looks like. Given that you won't really need access to the underneath of the control panel that much, you pull out the drawer, and these sections here are not actually screwed in, they're just put in with dowels, so you work from the bottom, you just pull them out, and there's the dowels there. Now if you look, you can probably get access to the whole control panel there, but if you need to, then this front section clips out also. It's a bit of it's a tight squeeze, which is how it should be. And then the control panel at the minute obviously just rests, but what will happen is there'll be a couple of L brackets on there which you can just unscrew. This back section here, by the way, is just in case I use a monitor mount rather than having it mounted with the VESA screws. Yeah. And this section of wood here was temporary, but I think I'm going to keep it in, and all that was for is it's the 660mm wide, and it just keeps the centre in one place, because if I let go of this, then the wood tends to splay out a little bit, and so it's wider on this section than it is on the top or the bottom. Okay. Now obviously none of these bits of wood are glued in yet, because when I was building it I might have well wanted to make changes, which I have. Okay, so and that is just about it really. Obviously there's the marquee light, fits in nicely, and it's just wired with a simple junction box temporarily at the minute, just to try it out. Okay, here are the parts that you'll need, and are some of which are optional. Okay, so unless you're doing some sort of abstract art based cabinet, you need your edges true. Similarly, set square for drawing nice 90-degree angles. Okay, we have a plane. This is just a cheap block plane. That's to take off. I've used it a few times, but I could have easily just used the sandpaper or my sander. Okay. Here we have a mask, because MDF is dangerous. Okay. Now screws. What I've used is gold screws. These, and the size is 4x35, which is in old money. It's about an 1.25 inches, and that's a box of 200. I think in old size that's probably a size 8, something like that. Yeah, don't need them too fat. Yeah, just nice. And the reason why I bought these is because when you get your MDF and the wooden blocks which it forms onto, you need to make sure that the screw doesn't go through, and my MDF is 18mm, and so is the blocks, which is 18mm, 36mm, which is about 1.5 inches. Okay, so that's just the right size screw. I've also used a couple of these screws, which are about 15mm, like 5/8 or something like that, and that's for when I'm joining this wood to things without using blocks, and that's so that it doesn't go through the MDF at all. Screwdriver, this has been perfect for the job. It's done absolutely everything so far. Tape measure, Stanley knife, and sliding bevel. That's to get all of the angles for example the speaker casing, which is on about a 15-20 degree angle. You need one of these sliding bevel. Probably don't need a marking gauge, but I've used it once, I think, to measure to mark a score down the middle of the line. Pencil, marker obviously, and this is quite useful, and this, and just use them as marking gauges. So this is the timber joist, or what I used to join things together, as in, you know, the bits of wood here. So what I've done is just marked the halfway point, so that instead of measuring things out whenever I want to put the halfway point on bits of wood to join them or find the centre, I'll just use that bit of wood. Similarly, just got an offcut, and if you notice it's got little marks in, and that's for when I'm lining up my jigsaw and things. So instead of having to measure the gap between where the line and where the edge of the guide is for the jigsaw or the circular saw, you just use this, put it on the bit of wood, clamp it down with your straight edge, and then you can just cut. Okay, see, clamps, these are quite useful because you can just take them off really quickly. These are a bit of a pain because you've got to screw them by hand, but that's all I had. What would have been really useful if you got them, all the better, is sash clamps. They are sort of really long clamps that you can use for wide things. So for example, when you're keeping the sides of the cabinet together, a sash clamp would have been ideal. Okay, now dowels, for that you used an 8mm drill bit, which is about, I don't know, 1/4 inch. This is I think it's 3mm. Yep, that's 3mm, and then which is 1mm narrower than the screws. Okay, so the idea is you drill your pallet holes first, then you put the screw in, and that way you're not going to split the wood, and it's going to go in nice and smooth. And finally, countersink. What this is for is to make sure that when you've screwed your holes, you use this countersink bit, so that when the screw goes in, it's below the surface, and that's countersink does a lovely job. Okay. Of course, you could just force it through with your screwdriver if you really wanted to. Okay, onto the tools. This is the jigsaw. This is what I've used to cut most of the wood, because the blade is really quite thin, and it means you can get really accurate results. There's the router. Obviously you need that for if you're using T-moulding. If you're not, you'll need a router, and the other bit which you'll need is just something like this, which is just a straight bit. Okay. This is the circular saw. You can use it to cut your main wood, but because the blade is really thick, I think using the jigsaw you get a more accurate cut. Okay. And finally on the tools, this is a belt sander. I've used this quite a lot. It's not mine, I borrowed it off Harry. Sandpaper. I've just used fairly rough 40 grade, and that'll do. That does for just getting the edges of the MDF and the other bits of wood. And finally I've got the sandpaper for the fine stuff, which is, I've got 600, 400, 240 and 1200, which is really fine. That's for the finishing touch.